Revisited, and as everyone knows, I'm sure, this is the little mini episode thing, whatever you want to call it, where we're revisiting beers that we reviewed way back in the day, back when perhaps we couldn't really appreciate them, or we didn't even know how to do a podcast. So this is a beer from an episode where we definitely didn't know how to do a beer podcast, because this is the beer that we reviewed on episode 1. It's Adnams Southwold Bitter. It is a 4.1% bitter, I'm assuming is what you call it. So if you want to hear what we originally said about this beer, go back and listen to episode 1. We'll link it in the show notes. Try and ignore all the other guff that we wank on about in between when we're trying to figure out how you do an audio review of a beer over the internet. Steve.
Mark.
Adnams, one of your favourite
Yes.
breweries. Back then, probably your favourite brewery.
Absolutely, yeah. They're probably the only brewery I knew back then, apart from Adnams and Fuller's and Green King.
And Foster's.
Yeah, back in the day when you used to herald me as being this amazing beer expert, where actually I knew pretty much fuck all.
And upon such basis was Beer O'Clock Show founded.
Yes, and look, we're still here now, 100 and something shows in, and actually with a fairly decent following and part of an amazing community as well.
Yeah. And it all started at episode 1 of the Beer O'Clock Show on July 26th, 2012 is when it was released. God, that seems so long ago.
Yeah.
Adnams Southwold Bitter. Should we get into it, mate?
Yeah, let's. I think it's probably fair to say at this point that I chose this beer for our first beer, purely based on its availability.
Yeah.
And it was one that we could both get hold of fairly easily. It was not too heavy on the ABV, a standard English bitter. And my thinking was it would be a good introduction to a lager boy like you to the world of real ales. Because let's remember, back on the 26th of July 2012 or whenever it was, all we knew was real ale. We didn't know that such a thing as craft beer existed back then.
No, we didn't go to such places.
No.
But it pours a beautiful copper colour, very, very light carbonation, one finger head for mine. The aroma coming off it.
The aroma's almost coppery as well, isn't it?
Sweet, earthy. A real English smell.
Yeah. I think you've nailed it bang on there, mate. It's earthy, it's woody. There's a hint of spice in there, maybe a little bit of biscuit, maybe a little bit of ginger as well. So like a little bit like a ginger nut aroma to it. Like you say, a lovely copper colour. It's exactly what you expect to see when you see the words bitter on a bottle or on a pump. That's what you expect to see in your glass.
Indeed. And not much else to say. Let's get into it, mate.
Yeah, let's give it a try and see what we think of it now, almost 3 years on.
I don't think I've had this since.
I don't think I have either. So this will be interesting.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Ooh. It's a malt bomb. Why I went ooh is I took a few mouthfuls and then that floralness, that aroma, kind of had a second wave back up my throat than through my nose. So I got a secondary aroma from it, which was really interesting. I remember when we reviewed this the first time that I found this quite pleasant, and I may have used those exact words. It's not an offensive beer.
Nothing unpleasant about it. Yeah, no, absolutely. If I was in a craft desert where I was struggling to find any decent beer, and I found myself in a pub that had taps of mainstream lager, and then this on the pump, I would go for this every time because I think it's a solid beer. It's one that hasn't changed in many years. It's an example of what Adnams do best, which is a traditionally typical English style beer.
Yeah, it's a good little beer. Especially, we spoke about this on the main show maybe last week, or maybe just before the break, about how there seems to be this resurgence of respect for the English bitter. People are starting to brew them again outside of, the areas outside of the camera circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the what you would term the craft breweries, the new wave British breweries are now going back, and they're doing their own takes on an English bitter. Recently we saw Weatherspoons in their spring festival insist that all of the beers for that were brewed with exclusively British hops as well, to showcase what hops from Britain can do. Yeah, I think it's an absolute excellent example of what beers can taste like. This, you'll be pleased to know, it's full of fuggles. It's completely and utterly fuggled up. It's literally fuggles at every fuggling stage. So it's late and dry hopped with fuggles. It's got East Anglian Pale Ale malt barley, more fuggles late in the boil, fuggles in the dry hop, fuggles in the cast. It's fuggled to within an inch of its life, mate.
We're old friends of Adnams. We admire their beers. They've put out some great stuff. This is not. If you're a craft beer drinker, I wouldn't rush out and try this, because you'll probably be disappointed.
That's very true.
But if you're, it's such a nice beer. It does exactly what it promises to do, which is give you a bottle worth of drinkable bitter. And there isn't really much more than you can expect from that, other than the fact that it's clean, has a lovely mouthfeel to it. It has all the flavours and aromas you would expect from a Fuggles-based bitter, and it's so drinkable if that's your style of thing. And in episode 1, I didn't have a style of thing that I wanted, and I found this quite nice. Coming from, I called myself a lager drinker. I barely drank lager. I wasn't really a beer drinker. I wasn't really much of a drinker. Steve broke me, as my wife keeps reminding him. But this was a really good introduction to beer as a whole. Obviously, things went quickly downhill, and I turned into a little bit of a wanker. But not much else to say. It's, for its style, it's a great example of the style.
Yeah, I think it's bang on what you say there, mate. That if you're listening to this podcast, and this particular podcast, part of our revisited series, expecting that it is going to craft the living daylights out of you, this ain't it. This is us going back and retrying a beer that we tried in the very first episode. If you're listening to this in the hope of, well, actually, I've never tried that beer before, and I'd like to see what those guys think about it. Yes, it's a perfect gateway, introductory beer to somebody that's looking to move into various different styles. If you are looking for an example of a traditional classic English bitter, single hopped as well, so it's only got fuggles in it, this is it. This is an example of how you can use fuggles in a beer. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say other than that, other than trying to bestow the virtues of a single fuggled beer. I'm not sure what else we can really say there.
I've just got this vision of Fergus looking at us going, you craft wanker boys, you just don't talk shit about my product.
Well, it's part of the Adnams core range. You see Adnams, you do expect a certain style of beer. Many times I whenever we do an Adnams beer, I always use the phrase, it's got that Adnams backbone, and it's got that malty backbone to it, that typical flavour that you get Adnams beers. I didn't know when we first did this that it was a single hop beer. I was surprised to find out this evening that it's a single hop beer, because kind of single hop beers are all the rage. It's a single hop Fuggles beer. Had I known that 3 years
Yeah,
ago, there's no way I probably would have ever chose this to have tried. But in terms of a gateway introductory bitter, English bitter, I don't think you can get too much further away from this as a great example of the style. And if anybody knows any others, then let us know. Let us know if there are any other great examples of good British bitters.
exactly. Right, okay. Well, I think that's about all we can say. Thanks for tuning in to this little mini-sode, part of the Revisited series. We have done one previously, which was for... Which one was it for? I can't remember.
Thornbridge Wild Raven,
Which was for Thornbridge Wild Raven, that black IPA.
which was our first introduction to craft,
That was.
I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
That was a good beer. As we raved about a second time. But go
Yes.
listen back to that if you want to catch up on all of them. They're all on the feed. This is the Beer O'Clock Show. The website is beeroclockshow.co.uk. And send us a little message on Twitter at Beer O'Clock Show and let us know what you think of this, whether you're trying Southwold Bitter for the first time as a crafty, or as if you're a long-term Southwold Bitter drinker and you want to have a little chat about what your thoughts are on this style of beer amidst what is a burgeoning craft scene. Right, until next time, Stephen.
Yes, mate. Looking forward to it.